troops scheduled to return home within 2 years. Less than a year later, the Taliban swept into the northern city of Kunduz and captured their first province. It was a stunning defeat for the U.S.-backed government and a sign of the decline in security to come. The collapse exposed the flawed plan to turn over the war to the Afghan government and extract the United States from the long conflict. The reconstruction effort had empowered local warlords and made an industry out of corruption. The government was weak, and injustice fueled the Taliban insurgency. U.S. Special Forces and Afghan commandos were dispatched to save the province. Ripple effects were felt across the country, and Helmand nearly fell next. The situation left President Obama with a difficult choice. There were still 9,800 U.S. troops in Afghanistan. He could pull them out as planned by 2017, or stay in and hand the war over to his successor. The original mission that had launched the war, to hunt down Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, along with many of his supporters, was complete. But an abrupt U.S. exit raised the specter of the Civil War of the 1990s, which took place after the Soviet withdrawal and had led to the rise of the Taliban in the first place. Iraq was another lesson that loomed large. President Obama ordered a unilateral withdrawal of U.S. troops in 2011, which accelerated the country's descent into chaos and gave rise to Islamic State. The extremist group inspired one of the greatest movements of jihadists the world had seen in years, and soon pulled U.S. troops back to Iraq and into neighboring Syria. In Afghanistan, an Islamic State affiliate had quickly taken root as this was playing out in the Middle East. Ultimately, President Obama abandoned the plan to withdraw from Afghanistan and turned the war over to secretive U.S. Special Operations Forces, SOF, while denying that this amounted to a break in his campaign pledge. U.S. SOF, which operate in the shadows with little accountability to the public, have kept the Kabul administration on life support ever since. The U.S. mission in Afghanistan is no longer framed as a war. It is now called a training and assistance mission, and its purported goal is to help the government achieve self-reliance. As a foreign correspondent in Afghanistan, I found reporting on the role of U.S. SOF in the conflict at this new stage in the war to be my greatest challenge. At the WSJ Bureau in Kabul, I was lucky to work with a great team of 2 reporters, Habib Khan Totahil and Asanullah Amiri. They were both in their 20s, were passionate about journalism, and remembered watching the U.S. invasion as children, when they were living as refugees across the border in Pakistan. Our bureau was located in a house that must have once belonged to a wealthy Afghan family. We shared it with the Washington Post's Kabul bureau to save costs. Our offices were in rooms at the back of the garden, and I converted the garage into a gym, where we had an old Chinese treadmill that would stop dead during power outages. The U.S. military rarely granted embeds with U.S. Army Special Forces, known as the Green Berets. The few reporters that were granted access were based in Washington, D.C., and even then, embeds were limited. Foreign correspondents never got to embed, probably because we were too critical of the mission. But as I discovered, there was another way to get in, through the Afghan forces that operated as the Green Berets' partners, fixers, and translators. U.S. Special Forces worked with a range of Afghan partners, depending on the circumstances and the location, from ragtag village groups to elite Afghan army commandos. If we wanted to find out what was going on in the East against the new Islamic State affiliate, we traveled with village militias in Akin or Khat district. When Kunduz fell a second time, we embedded with the Afghan commandos that partnered with Green Berets to recapture the city in 2016. It was a riskier way to work. The U.S. military used helicopters to shuttle personnel among their many bases, including those located barely a mile apart in different locations in Kabul. Afghan forces generally moved by road and expected us to drive to them, no matter how remote the location. Hitching a ride on an Afghan army helicopter was possible, but rare. Our Afghan hosts often displayed extraordinary bravery and hospitality, but they necessarily had a cavalier approach to safety, adding to the dangers we faced during embeds. We prepared for trips as best we could. Information was critical. The same highway might be under